Welcome to Uber Cube, the podcast where we discuss all things Cube. But we're going to talk a lot about drafting today and refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, a.k.a. Uber Bear. And today I'm joined by, once again...
It's Stu, but just Stu this time because we are recording as a duo today. May has a convention.
Yes.
She's off to this weekend, so we're just doing a double act, throwing it back to the old days. And yeah, today we're going to talk about drafting.
Yep, and we're actually trying to get a little ahead here too, because in the month of June, actually next week at today's recording, which is currently June 7th, my son Caden will be graduating from high school on the 13th. So we're so proud of Caden, and we want to really focus on that. So we wanted to get this knocked out. And then post his graduation, I am taking my family to the great state of Alaska. We've been planning this family vacation for a while. So you, the listeners, I will upload in our Discord all these cool pictures because I've never been to Alaska before. Super excited to just see a glacier for the first time while they're still here. And... for the next 10 years. Want to see them while they're here, right? That in Venice.
Listen, I work with a guy right now, and he lived in Alaska for many years, and he loved it. And I know people that have gone and done like the cruises or just gone to, whatever the big cities are up there on vacation. They said it was fabulous.
And in true Adams fashion, there is a volcano right now that is in code yellow. So we are monitoring that actively. That would be my luck. So we are taking our passports in case we got to drive through the great country of Canada to run away from a volcano.
Good luck with that.
I
hope that volcano just chills out a little
I got
bit.
my volcano insurance. All right, so we're going to talk about something a little interesting today. We're actually going to do an exercise, but I'm going to build up to that. So Stu and I, we've talked a lot lately about sportsmanship. We've actually talked a little bit. We've kind of even griped a little bit about some of our games and how we might have went about playing recently and how games turned out. And we may have blamed specific cards or a circumstance or mana screw or, all the usual suspects that we do. And I would say that recently we had Justin Parnell on, and he said it would be a cool idea to do something a little different. Most of the time, we talk about cube design and kind of that idea, right? Like how to build a cube or what card should you add to a cube and cutting and whatever, the game philosophy, curation and, even don't bring fried chicken to the table. All these things we've done.
Oh, let's not get
We should start bringing a lot more fried chicken to the table. But one of the things that we haven't talked about a lot, and we're not your subject matter experts in this by any means, is about drafting. We want to kind of talk about how we both approach a draft, and so that maybe as you, the listener, here's what we have to say, and I'm sure there will be input. What are we doing wrong, right? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong about some of our approaches? And a lot of this is going to be very meta-esque, right? There's no way to put this, but we're going to do an exercise. But I'm going to get his thoughts first. Here, give me what you got, Steve.
Well, I think one of the reasons why I like discussions like this, especially, is, it's... Again, you could go all the way back 3+ years ago. One of the reasons why you came to me and said, hey, let's do a podcast is because we would sit around and have discussions like that we still do to this day, even when we're not recording. We're sitting around and talking about, curation or drafting or things outside of what we usually typically cover in the podcast, right? So the reason why I like these kind of discussions is I think it gives context to a lot of the other points and contexts and discussions that we have in other episodes, previous episodes, and almost certainly future episodes, as far as why we make the choices that we do, why we make the decisions, where the thought processes come from, why we arrive at a decision. And I think it's important to have that context to, kind of get an idea of where you might fall in that spectrum as far as, in this instance, how do you draft? What are your goals? What are your plans? Do you go in with a specific mindset before you start to draft? Are you going in there to be super competitive every time? Do you go, whatever the idea is, whatever you go in to try and draft, we'll talk a little bit about ourselves, and this will give some context on what we've talked about in the past.
And so we're going to do a thing that a lot of people argue the pros and cons of this, right? I think that there is a certain amount of pro to a pack one, pick one. And the reason why I'm going to say there is a pro to a pack one, pick one, it's not because I necessarily learned something about myself. It's whenever I put the why. Like I'll say pack one, pick one of, say, Uber Bear's Horror Cube or the Fem Cube, and why. And Ryan Sachs went so far as to say, like, what card are you picking to basically win? What card do you think doesn't belong in this pack, and then which one is the fun? And then there's kind of in the middle kind of idea with this, like at what point can you actually derive data from that? And I think that maybe there is no true like aspect of how you can pull data from a pack one, pick one. Rather, I think it's a learning mechanism to maybe see through other people's lenses if they explain to you why they are grabbing a card. And sometimes, I'll throw up a pack one, pick one, and they don't pick what I think. And oftentimes when I throw one up, say my Powered Vintage Cube, that's a fine example of what I'm going to say. If I'm going to present a pack one, pick one to, say, the Facebook MTG drafting page or the UberCube Discord, I will click through until I get rid of all the Moxen. Or sometimes it used to be like Library of Alexander. They're like, oh, easy ley line of the wind or whatever, or Library of the Wind. I'm like, it didn't even wasn't even fun, interactive. So you'll find yourself kind of clicking through like 3, 4, or 5 times. Try to find something that's low enough to the ground that you have enough things competing so that it sparks a discussion, because I want to see a discussion. If I see Mother of Runes and then I see a bunch of like 4, 5, and 6 drops, Mother of Runes is going to win. I see a Path of Exile is going to win. I see Force of Will, I know it's going to probably maybe win, because people lean into the staples and what they're so frequent to seeing.
And I will argue what they're familiar with, right?
It's always familiar.
It is, well, that's kind of, dare I say, a low-hanging fruit with the Vintage Cube, because, and like you say, extract all of the Moxen, Black Lotus, Ancestral Recall, Time Walk, all of the really, really obviously broken stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then, so let's say you've got a pack and it's got Minskamboo and it's got Forthirlingus and it's got, some level of adjacency and maybe comparable mana value cards. Now what are you talking about?
You've created tension in that decision.
You've created tension, but you've also created a situation where, are you really asking the question, what is the best card, or what card do you like?
Yeah, that's what's interesting.
I think you're more asking the question, what kind of player are you?
Yeah, and you don't normally get that. Like, that would probably be a fourth question, is what type of player are you typically? Because how do you extrapolate information from that?
I think from that pick. I think that's what I'm saying. I think
right.
If you've got a player that's taken a Minskamboo over a Forthirlingus, then they're probably maybe a favorable.
Then they'll say, I got the Minskamboo, and I'd also like the Forthirlingus. I don't think there's any data to parse there. So let's kind of move away from the data. Like, data as in, it's not like something you can really codify, is what I'm trying to say. I'm leaning into more to, it's just something that I see someone choose something that's a little off color, and if they explain to me an interaction that I was not aware that may have existed in my cube or someone else's. Like, if they take the time to explain it like that. Like, here is why I chose, say, Agatha's Soul Cauldron, for example, blah, 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 when it's sitting right next to, let's just say, Path to Exile or Counterspell. And I've seen that kind of happen, and I want to kind of talk that out. So how we're going to do this exercise is, first, we're going to have our drinks. And then I think what we'll do is, Stu and I, we have in front of us, and there's going to be an honor system here. We're just going to open up probably 1 or 2 of my cubes, maybe 3, and we're going to hit view random. And we're not going to sort them. We're going to make them better. And what we're going to do is have our own little personal deliberation. We'll read the cards out. I know this doesn't translate the best to this type of media.
Sure.
But what we're trying to get is our logic of approach. And also why you and I lose so much out of this. We're trying to squeeze the turnip here a little bit.
I like that you've added that qualifier in to justify, but it's got nothing to do with the lands. It's just because I'm drafting.
So
for fun.
what we'll do in this exercise, we'll talk out our thoughts, our process.
I think
so.
That's
Let's
good.
crack open our drinks first.
Right,
let's go ahead and do that.
What you drinking today?
I am actually going to have myself a Wicked Weed Pernicious Haze IPA. And how about yourself there, Stu?
I am going with, it's a favorite of mine. It's kind of a staple in my house. This is from Noda Brewing Company here in North Carolina.
I love that one
and
more.
It is Little Slurp.
Little Slurp is it's so good.
It's so good.
Big Slurp, a little bit too much. It is. I've
never seen
That's
a
the
big
yellow.
Slurp.
It's the yellow can.
Really?
I want to knock you on your ass.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll crack it.
Let's crack it.
Let's crack
Let's
the
crack
first cube. So this is Uber Bear's Artifact Cube,
which is in the lineup for potential featured. It's going into the voting system.
For
and I have
2026?
been tuning this
25?
sucker. Yeah, CubeCon 2025. And I have been tuning it. I've been updating it. It is, I think I have maybe 6 cards left to foil out in this thing.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like it's been so long since I've played this cube. It probably plays very different and drafts very differently than the last time.
It's really in a sweet spot.
All right, well, you ready?
Years. Let's do it. We're going to hit
All right,
here's where we're at. We're going to hit view random. We don't know what we're looking at.
All right, so I'm going to give a quick rundown of all these cards. Obviously, it doesn't translate as great when we're just doing the audio, but if you want to go check out the list, it's on Cube Cobra. You should be following Anthony by now.
So as we do this, what we're going to do is I'm going to have Stu in his lovely voice read these off, and then we are going to clip these into the show notes. Feel free to look at them or follow along in Scryfall, whatever you do. We're not going to read everything what it does. What we're going to do is talk it out about how we might approach this. This is actually, he's opened up a spicy pack that has a lot of tension on the first random nonsense. All right, Stu. Just name the cards.
All right, here we go.
Through.
All 15 cards are as follows. A Seeker's Chariot, Makeshift Munitions, Sunfall, Fatal Push, Kodama's Reach, Gruul's Signet, Baloth Cage Trap, Armix Filigree Thrasher, Cataclysmic Gearhulk, Retrofitter Foundry, Ethereum Sculptor, Hangerback Walker, Scuttling Doom Engine, Arkham Dagson, and Inventor's Fair.
All right, I would like to take this one on. I want to talk about regency bias for a minute. This is my cube. And so I'm going to read each one of these cards or kind of talk it out and then come to my conclusion.
Well, let me ask you first, before you start that. Do you have your pick one, pack one?
I do.
In your head?
I do.
Excellent.
I snapped to it already.
I did too. I've already got
But it's going to be, here's the problem with this. So we got a Seeker's Chariot. A Seeker's Chariot's won a lot of games in this cube. A lot. Like, it's a
powerful card.
It's a very powerful card. It takes over games, mid-range powerhouse. But I'm going to choose not to take that here. I'm going to pass on to the next one. Makeshift Munitions. The win in this one, it's kind of like a Goblin Bombardment that you have to pay that also interacts with artifacts. That one is not going to be a win con or something I'll latch into as a pack one, pick one. That's kind of the artifact sacrifice type thing.
Okay.
So I'm not going to take that.
Okay.
This is where the tension is going to kind of start here. We've got Sunfall that's now populated. Sunfall literally is a board wipe that makes incubate tokens. Sunfall, compared to the rest of the cards you talked about, is not as replaceable. It is a board wipe. There's not a lot of them in here that do mass wipes. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to talk this out as I am navigating it. Sometimes I look at board wipes. This one's interesting because it creates a dynamic of you blow up the board, but then you have board state potentially, right? You make those incubate tokens, which are...
you make an incubate token. So it's an incubate token with X counters on it, where X is...
Yeah, it reminds me of like that Phyrexian horror board wipe.
Yeah, but also important to remember with Sunfall, it is a 5 mana, right? Yeah. Board wipe's traditionally 4 mana. This is 5 mana, but it exiles.
Yeah, it is a control, really strong
very strong card.
So that one's definitely a tension point. Fatal Push is a card that's just known how powerful it is. That one would pull me in if I was being a hyper-efficient, just getting the best removal type card. But I'm going to actually pass on that. This is where that regency bias comes in. Kodama's Reach is a no-go for me because it's just ramp. Gruul's Signet, no-go for me, just ramp. Not that I actually should ignore that. I want to double back on that one. Our good friend Thomas wins a lot in this cube because he doesn't ignore those signets. Mm-hmm. He laughs at us all the time because we don't get the mana. He plays toolbox decks. He does everything he wants when he wants. We try to lean into strategies. Baloth Cage Trap is a card that busts people up. That card is broken in here.
I take it at every opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm not going to, and that's probably how I lose, because you get a 4/4 the minute your opponent plays the game, pretty much.
That's right.
4/1 colorless and green. That's probably a fault of mine for not taking a card like that in this cube. I'm going to skip over one for a minute. I'm going to come back. I'm going to kind of just rush through this. If I'm looking through this, Retrofitter Foundry is a pack one, pick one.
Yeah.
But it's not mine.
Okay.
I don't win with that a lot.
Okay.
I get lost in the sauce with that card sometimes.
Sure.
I'm too busy trying to make a machine. I'm not making the lines right. I don't get the value that I see a better player get out of that, if that makes sense.
It does.
Ethereum Sculptor, I'm never going to take that. Reduces your cost. Hangerback Walker always calls you because that interesting subject matter that people say that I'm going to pick these colors cards because I want to stay open. And I appreciate that. Same with Retrofitter. They don't want to make a decision. They don't want to burn themselves in right now. They don't want to commit to anything. Mm-hmm. This pack has a lot of commitment in it, or it can, even though they're all, luckily, everything in here and most things in this cube are either, colorless or a single color. So you don't have to commit to like a guild strategy.
Right.
There's only one of in each.
Yeah.
Arkham Dagson is cute. Arkham Dagson is the card that I would play if I want to have fun. This is the card that I'll also lose with. This is the Goblin Welder type effect. This is where you and I get our asses kicked all the time. That's the draw-in. Would you agree with that?
100%. I have a copy of this card. It was a plan a long time ago. I was going to build a commander deck. I was actually gifted a copy of this card many years ago by our good friend Jason. I was thinking, man, there's just so much fun I could have with this card. The commander deck never materialized, but absolutely, this is a card that many moons ago is obviously, it's been power crept kind of
Oh,
out
yeah.
the wazoo nowadays, but has so much fun associated.
It's the welder type package or the fiddle bender.
Yeah.
So people can win with this, and they certainly can. It's just if I'm trying to go optimal. If I'm going to go fun, though, Arkham Daxon is probably my lean in because I would double back on that Scuttling Doom engine. I want to see that action, right? I want to see that take 6. I want to do some nonsense. But I'll go ahead and skip ahead and tell you the card that calls to me the most because I've seen the patterns of it. It plays consistently, and it is Armix Filigree Thrasher. It's legendary artifact creature Golem, so you can sink into that Golems thing, which is also the trap for you and I, right?
Yes, it is.
In this cube. For a 3/2, when Armix Filigree Thrasher attacks, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature defending player gets -X until in turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control plus the number of artifacts in your graveyard. So when I see something like this, I want to do like a trash to treasure type deck. I want to do the artifact sack type deck, right? And I like that style. You and I played at the first CubeCon. When we played this, I played an artifact sack versus your, I guess you'd already weren't in the game because you got killed by, it was the Trigon Predator. So you really didn't even want to play me anyways back then. You'd already been nose beat.
Yeah, this was
You
in
were-
the
you were
earlier
wiping that
days
little blood off your lip.
Yeah, I'd played Christian in the first round, and yeah, he just Trigon Predatored me to death. 2 games in a row. I'm like, oh, surely he won't get it both games, but he did.
So Armax is kind of a machine on a stick, right? I mean, for me, it's multi-layers. So there is a Golem synergy deck that's in here if you find certain payoffs, although that doesn't tend to matter as much, but you'd have some of the artificers give them first strike or give them flying or whatever, right? But that's not really why I would take this card, especially because it's in black. It's because it's removal on a stick, and it sets you up for some pretty cool trash for treasure looping type synergies. That's my pack one, pick one. Now, before we do yours, is that, in your opinion, there's a lot of efficient cards on here. There's a lot of better cards on here. That's how I lean in.
That's why we lose, because we pick Armix and Arkham Dagsons over Fatal Push. Right, because
Fatal Push should be the pick.
Is probably is one of the more correct picks. If you are trying to optimize your deck, you're trying to draft to win in the most optimum fashion. But I'm not always trying to draft to win, or at least I'm trying to draft to have fun. Always.
Not that I know the context of every environment that I walk into. This is how I view things like Fatal Push or Path to Exile sometimes, or even Counterspell. If you don't have like the Snapcaster effects or the recursion effects, I have a hard time. I look at Fatal Push as a one-time situational card. Not situational. It's a very efficient card. It will deal with something.
Correct.
No argument there. But it's one time, and then I'm gonna have my own problems in the gameplay with timing and when to use that card. Right? Like it'll get something for sure. It's just that's an Anthony thing. When I look at something like Armix in this pack, I see repeat ability that will allow me to catch up in a game. What I mean is, it doesn't put that pressure or that tension on me as a drafter to make that fatal decision, fatal push, that one time, burn that card. No, I probably will never see that again. It'll be in my pile. Versus Armix, I can keep trying to hit the thing over and over again. I see repeatability. So of all these cards we've named, the ones that beckon to me were Armix and Sunfall. Sunfall because it's a very unique situational card that you don't see any of these that can do that, right? Mass board wipes are limited.
Yep.
And I look at them like that sometimes. Yep. And then Armix is repeatable removal. Now, let's let you do your thing. That was my... I don't. You can criticize me, but that's how I lean in.
No, absolutely. So I like the fact. Obviously, we talked about repeatable effects. The fact that you obviously have that control over, what creature do you want to go for? If it's early on in the game and you're looking at like a 6 or a 7 mana card that's in your hand, might not really be able to have the game go long enough for that card to be impactful as even you're, casting it from your hand. So I like this as an option. Again, you've got a lot of choice with what you can do with it. And repeatable removal is never going to be a bad thing. There's a lot of creature-based stuff going on in this cube, right? That's fair to say. A lot of times you're winning with either some kind of creature-based ability or even swinging with creatures. So the ability to be able to do that, basically at will, I think is a powerful effect. I don't dislike it.
I want to roll back to what we said about Pack 1 Pick 1s. I throw up a lot of Pack 1 Pick 1s, either in the MTG drafting page and or in the Ubercube Discord and others. And when Armix is in that pack, and it's not, say, versus these cards, I know that's randomized, Armix comes up as a Pack 1 Pick 1 often by players. So I'm always wondering if me as a drafter are really looking at what other people do, or I'm trying to logic this out, right? I'm overthinking, over processing the draft, but I see Armix is like a zero pressure point for me. Like discarding card doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Like I used to be when I first started playing Magic, but now that I've been playing Magic for a long time, discarding card is almost a benefit, even if I can't get the card back. Right? I'll toss it and like, sure, I'll deal with your threat for this thing. So whereas Fatal Push and all these one-time use effects, I feel less secure in that decision making and when at that moment of gameplay to make that choice.
Yeah, no, that's a very legitimate point. Obviously, the counterpoint to that is always going to be that, especially early on in a game of Magic, if you have Fatal Push and a Swamp in your hand, you've pretty much got an answer to anything that's coming out in the first couple of turns, right? And that is an incredibly powerful, and obviously being so efficient at only 1 mana, it's very hard, and there's a reason why cards like this are held at such a premium, why this is a staple in things like the Vintage Cube. It's just the efficiency for 1 mana is off the charts.
I always wonder where a pro might lead themselves down this path, right? Where we'll say a Sam Black, or even we'll say our good friend Thomas, right? Where would they land in this decision making? And I think they would either go Fatal Push or a Retrofitter Foundry. And that we are, you never gave us your pack one, pick one, but I totally went my direction there.
So, yeah, I would agree. First of all, if I'm drafting this to win, I'm really try-harding, there's money on the line, whatever the case may be, it's going to be one of either Fatal Push or Retrofitter Foundry. Those are the 2 cards that, in my opinion, represent the strongest ability to turn your deck into a very, very powerful deck. The thing I like about Retrofitter Foundry in this cube is that there's a lot of ways to generate Thopters, and just being able to tap Retrofitter Foundry anytime you have a Thopter and create a 4/4, so you can just, get one out there and then wait for your opponent to attack and then block with your Thopter and then sack the Thopter in response, and now you've got a 4/4 that is attacking. Incredibly powerful effect. And like I say, maybe that's would I slightly give the edge to that in this cube, knowing that there's a plethora of ways to create Thopters, maybe, but it's really hard to say no to Fatal Push, again, because of that efficiency with removal. But honestly, if I was going to pick one, it's probably going to be Sunfall. And the reason is very simple, and it goes all the way back to what you said early on when you first discussed it and described it, is that board wipes are at such a premium. And I feel like this is a discussion that we've had on numerous occasions, either because we've discussed that subject matter directly as an episode, or it's just come up organically when we've talked about other cubes. And board wipes and mass removal are, in my opinion, something that tends to be, curators are cautious about them, and rightly so, right? In the same way that you're going to be cautious about any kind of resource denial, be it creatures, it could be mana, whatever the case may be, there is kind of this reset of the game, and sometimes you just want to keep the game moving forward. But Sunfall, it's 5 mana, it exiles all the creatures, you get that incubate token. Who knows how big that could be? You're not, one of the other things that I really like about Sunfall is that you're not necessarily disincentivized for playing your own creatures, because you've got that ability to grow that incubate token, because your own creature's getting exiled. So those, additional +1/+1 counters that come on really can be impactful and just can make a creature monstrous.
And so one of the questions that I ask myself as a drafter, and I think I've been doing this for roughly a year and a half, is this card replaceable? Right? I ask that when I'm flipping through the cards.
Is it?
Well, no, I mean any card. Like when I
is it?
So I do like this draft. When I'm drafting, I do generally like take the 3 cards that catch my eye and I float them to the top and I flip through them as people do, right? I keep flipping the cards, but the top 3 I'm kind of flickering and flipping or whatever, trying to get my decision or whatever before I lean in. And every time I keep going through it, can I replace this in this cube? So Fatal Push, when I say that, and this is me being the curator, I know this, it is a removal spell. I know others exist. I say that is replaceable. Retrofitter Foundry is not replaceable.
No.
Armix is not really replaceable. Seeka's Chariot is not really replaceable. Other things don't do that. Sunfall is not replaceable. Other things like Arkham Daxon, things do that. Goblin Welder does that.
Correct.
And I know that, and maybe people don't know that drafting my cube, and that's kind of where the recency bias comes from, drafting your own cube. But I could draft anybody's cube, and I always wonder, like, Kodama's Reach, I pass that. I'm always going to pass that, right? But I pass it. Do they have a rampant growth? Or do I pass the rampant growth because I can get a Kodama's Reach? Or do I even care about ramping, and am I even in those colors? Right? I'm always asking myself how much this matters.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why, specifically with Kodama's Reach, I feel like green has tended to angle towards that kind of rampy, ability within a cube. So typically if I see a Kadama's Reach, like you say, I'm probably expecting there to be at least one more similar or if not identical effect. 3 mana, go and get 2 basics, 1 tapped and 1 in your hand, or whatever the case may be. So very replaceable. Arkham Dagson is replaceable, and honestly, the reason why I probably don't take it in this cube is because I know where some of the sweet spots are when it comes to the curve, and 4 mana for a creature that's only a 2/2, it's really, really asking a lot. It is, however...
Yes, I know where you're going with
this.
It
is the card that if I'm taking Sunfall first, it's the card I also want to wield the most. Because I then am thinking, can I angle more towards that blue-white control? And that can be a card that can go from, hey, I've exiled all the creatures, I drop an Arkham Dagson, and now, I find some way to get, maybe I've got a treasure token or whatever, and... Or, sorry, now maybe I've got like a Thopter that I've been able to create maybe from my Retrofitter Foundry, and then I can take that and turn it into, some crazy non-creature artifact that's going to be impactful. So that to me, again, sort of leans in on more of the fun side of things.
Yeah.
But I still can't take it over something.
So to kind of try to make this make sense, what we're doing is, we did this on the fly. Stu and I didn't talk this out. We wanted to see how we kind of, puzzle solve as we look at a pack one, pick one. And we know that at this point, normally you would take the card and pass it. And we're going to spare the audience listening to that. We don't have a translatable media for that particular scenario.
One of the things that I do really like, about this entire pack, right? Stick with me on this. Sunfall, very powerful, right? Retrofitter, in my opinion, is a great complement to Sunfall because you can spurt out tokens.
You'll never see it again, though, after this.
They're also absolutely not.
That's the problem.
It's not coming back. Sunfall is very unlikely to come back. Retrofitter is definitely not coming back. Retrofitter works well with Sunfall. Retrofitter obviously also works very well with Inventor's Fair because as soon as you've got those 3 artifacts, you're able to gain life. It also works very well with Makeshift Munitions because now you've got creatures that you can sack, right? A Seeker's Chariot. I mean, you could argue that a Seeker's Chariot and Makeshift Munitions, you don't ideally want to be sacking a Seeker's Chariot, but you get 2 green cat creatures, and then you turn a Seeker's Chariot, into an artifact, you attack with it, maybe you sack the cats with the Makeshift Munitions, right? There's some nice synergy there. Similarly with something like Bailoff Cage Trap, you get to, play it for cheap, you've got a 4/4, you swing with it, maybe that's the last, 5 points that you need to be able to attack with a 4/4 and then sack it to make Makeshift Munitions. So you've got all these cool synergies that, and this is just a random pack. We've had no discussion previously, there was no prep for this, but to me, this is something that speaks volumes about the cube in general, that I can look at this like any player would and be able to see, I want that. I'd love that to come back. Those 2 work together. Those 3, those 2. Like, there's all this stuff going on.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to tell you this is not a gift I possess. I kind of fake it and pretend like I know that they're like predicting what will return. So we watch people like LSV and others when they're streaming, and they can pretty much on the money tell you what's not going to come around.
Well, it's a lot easier when you're doing it on Magic Online or even probably on Arena because you've got all those 15 cards just there on a pretty screen. Whereas when you're doing it in paper, like we do, like I
you're
don't
trying to
play
memorize
online
as
at
much
all.
as possible.
Well, you've got everything laid out, right? So it's much easier to say. And I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, 8 cards. A Seeker's Chariot
is gone.
Retrofitter's gone. Sunfall's gone. Fatal Push is gone.
Armix is gone.
I would say Armix is very likely to be gone. Ethereum Sculptor is probably gone.
Yeah.
Definitely Hangerback Walker, I think, is
that's the stay open scenario,
And then likely Kadama's Reach.
And so you're looking, maybe. I think Adventure's Fair might actually go before that, but we could debate on that one.
The reason why I say Kadama's Reach is because Chariot is likely to go fairly early.
Yeah.
If there's more than... There's 3 good green cards in this pack, but I tend to see people do value that ramp, especially if you've got players who aren't as familiar with the cube and they think, you know what... Generally, if you've got access to more resources than the other player, you've probably got a pretty good chance to win.
So do you try to do that as an exercise when you're drafting? Do you try to predict won't return?
Yeah.
I do my best on a flicker through. I'm like, this is gone, this is gone. I know this
Yes.
is gone. But then when I'm banking on the thing to return, that's where it gets challenging, right? I also always just been mystified by people's ability to really track as something's moving around the table, right? So you're seeing a lot of cards fed across to you, and I'm just kind of playing in the moment. And I'm actually, when I'm drafting, I'm actually, to a degree, and this may be a bad thing. I think this might be a bad habit, and I'm going to mention this. So while I'm drafting, I kind of deck build in my head. A lot of people deck build post. They lay the cards out and let the cards tell them what the deck looks like. I don't. I literally, in my head, I'm kind of clocking where I do like a little number system in my head. I'm like, I got X amount of 3s, X amount of 4s. I'm kind of doing that in my head the best I can. I need this many lands. And I keep it kind of really, to a fault, probably regimented and frameworky. Like I'm saying, all right, well, I've got like 3 non-basics. All right, cool, did that. I've got 3 piece removal. All right, cool, did that. And also, I don't have, I mean, if we're kind of doing the faults, these are self-awareness is what I'm saying. I tend to dig in and lean more to an idea whenever I'm drafting, that I don't let it go. I don't pivot the best. I actually don't pivot well at all.
I generally tend not to, and I will say I do the same thing. I'm building the deck as I'm drafting it. I don't know if you noticed this, but I am typically
You and I are the
first or
fast
second.
ones. Yep.
Like my deck is built
I'm throwing
less
in-
than 3, and
Yep.
I've built my deck. I've already got my lands. I'm shuffling, and I'm looking, and there's players that have still got their columns of cards, and they're like, moving one to a pile, and then I'm like,
I see that. I see that too. And I always,
absolutely.
Well, I'm wondering. Like, this is for the listeners. Actually, I think we can go ahead and answer this. That's probably part of the problem, is that we're spending a lot of our mental energy and our potential while building the deck in our head, that we're staying in a lane, staying narrow-minded maybe to a degree, or maybe letting a card like Arkham Daxam or Armix build the deck for us. And I'm saying this, I'm speaking back to myself. I know if I get Armix, I'm going to start grabbing cards that support Armix.
Yeah.
And I will go into a lot of drafts and never see Armix again.
Right.
Or Goblin Welder, and then you and I will get frustrated, where we'll just kind of play like, okay, sure, we got a Scuttling Doom engine, and that's a fantastic card, and it dies, but it'd be so much better if I could just loop this with Welder, right? And then I'm like, I wanted this deck to do this, but it didn't do that. And you see what I'm saying? It's a lot of that machine type of building, but I latch onto something, and I don't pivot. I suck at pivoting. And I'm going to ask the listeners to ask themselves, and this is for you to know, do you do that? Do you pivot, or do you like see a card and you like dig in and you just keep following that line? Like, what draft habits do you have, and what bad ones do you have, and what good ones do you have? I think a good one from an efficiency standpoint is you and I are fast at both drafting and deck building. From a bad one, we're really bad at deck building.
We're bad
really
because we're drafting too quickly. Yeah. But no, I think that I do look at the packs subjectively, and I am always open if I open a card that I think is just too good to not include in my deck and even to build around. I generally have a pretty good idea of what I've already drafted, so if I'm onto pack 2 and I've got a pretty good start to whatever archetype I feel like I'm drafting in this particular draft, I am very happy to take this one card, and it could be 2 colors that I'm not in. Maybe I've drafted 2 colors, a whole of pack 1, and then I open up pack 2, and it's like, man, I've got this 2-color card that's just not even remotely in the colors. I am very happy to shift a little to try and support that. And sometimes that's as simple as just taking more fixing. Sometimes you got to shift the strategy.
All right, so we're going to do this again, this exercise, but for the listeners, I will include in the show notes an image of what we just talked about, and to spare all of you and us of reading all these cards. We're going to do a different cube. Let's do Uber Bear's Horror Cube. Also in the list of potential, it would have happened by the time this comes out, but this one will be a weird one. We're doing kind of a lower profile. We'll do vintage maybe at the end, but let's do a talk it out again. I think this is a fun exercise. So we're going to go again. We're just walking through this as we speak. We're waiting on the internet to load here. And then we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and you're going to trust us, view random.
Ready?
Whatever comes up.
All right, here we go.
You go first.
All right, so as we did previously, I'm just going to read off all these cards quickly. We'll include them in the show notes. So we have, this is, again, Uber Bear's Horror Cube. This is a 360 card, unpowered, vintage cube. We have Lightning Mauler, Remorseful Cleric, Talisman of Impulse, Undying Evil, Arabella, Abandoned Doll, Intrepid Adversary, Hengegate Pathway, Midnight Reaper, Crypt Breaker, Primal Adversary, Hellpack Piper, Unexpectedly Absent, Ascendant Pack Leader, Overcharged Amalgam, and last but not least, Meticulous Archive.
Let me ask you a question. You already have your pack one, pick one just while you're reading it in your head?
No.
I think I do.
No.
I think I latched right onto something immediately.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and do your analyzation first. Just kind of walk through it. So you can kind of tell them the name and then why not, why would you even bother? Not going to bother. And this is a weaker pack. This is not a super.
I don't know if I would necessarily call it weak.
Is in I guess in context of the cube, it's medium-ish.
Okay.
No blowouts here.
That's fair. All right. So Lightning Mauler, not to me, it's a good card, but not a great card. You get the haste ability, so it's nice if you've been able to play something on turn one that's, maybe a 2-1, and then you play this. It's an aggressive card, but I'm not a particularly fond of aggro kind of player, so I'm going to pass on that. Remorseful Cleric, great card, but kind of can be aggressive because it's a 2-1 flyer, but a little sideboardy because you've got the Exile the Graveyard ability.
Time out. I want to put a pin in that. You say a little sideboardy, though.
Sideboard.
Well, this is a horror cube.
Correct.
Where that self-milling, not so much milling, but it is literally multiple decks are doing it. I want to ask a question about that, and I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Not at all.
Does that feel truly sideboard to you in an environmental context where there's that much?
It's not completely. That's why I said a little sideboard.
Okay.
So I'm not remiss to playing this card. I would like, if I was drafting, let's say, a white-red or white-X aggressive deck, having a card that is 2 mana that attacks for 2 in the air is definitely a strong card, and the fact that it has that ability, but am I going to prefer other cards in favor of that? Maybe. That's why I said little. I would say when I say little sideboardy, I could be talking 10% sideboardy.
Okay.
I'm probably looking for other cards that are a little bit more aggressive, but I'm not mad about playing that in the main.
It's not a unreplaceable effect either.
It's not. It's just a 2 mana flyer.
You're thinking about that too. All right, well, carry on, Keebler, as I interrupted. I just want to
Not
understand the logic.
Valid question. Absolutely. So, Talisman of Impulse. I love the talismans, but I'm not pick one, pack oning one. Undying Evil, I do very, very much like. I love effects that are punishing when your opponent uses a removal spell, or potentially when you're blocking and now you're getting an advantage. So Undying Evil brings a creature back, gives it a +1/+1 counter. It has Undying, so if it dies and it had no +1/+1 counters on it, it returns to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. So cards like this, I think, are very powerful. I do like them. They can be a little combat tricky, but it's pretty efficient as well, right?
Yeah.
It's only 1 mana. Maybe you trade your 3 power for the 3 toughness or whatever. It's a fine card, but I'm not pick one, pack oneing it. Arabella Abandoned Doll is a absolutely busted card, and I'm probably pick one, pack oneing this if I hadn't done exactly that. Not the last time we played this cube, but I think a couple of times we played this cube, as well as our good friend
there's at
Chris's.
least 3-4 iterations of Arabella. That's probably where I don't know if it was in this cube. It may have been the Peasant cube. It was.
Both.
It may have been in the Horror cube.
Both.
It may have been in the Fem cube.
It was
may have been in the Artifact cube.
No, it was definitely...
This card's that good.
It was definitely the Peasant cube, as well as one of your cubes. I don't recall which, but it might have been this one. But a great card. Definitely would completely understand anyone taking this. It's bonkers. It's very powerful. I've just played with it a couple of times, so I'm probably not going to pick one, pack one it. But I understand you could argue that it's the right pick. Intrepid Adversary, I think, is a very, very powerful card. Comes down as a 3/1 lifelink for 2. Has that ability to pay 2 mana into it, so it's powerful at any time in the game. I like this card very much. Am I pick one, pack one in it? No, but again, it's another card that I really wouldn't argue is... I don't think it's pick one, pack oneable in this scenario, but it's definitely in the 2-3
I don't think it is either, but I want to kind of talk about that draft orientation as we do this. We're not just pack one, picking one, but like the logic, I guess, as we do this.
Yeah.
When I see this card would stall me for a second. And because it has lifelink, I think to myself... I know that creates tension in games, not necessarily in a positive way all the time, but it will get you back on your feet, even though it has aggressive stats, right? It's an aggro card, but it also has an anthem built into it.
It does.
That doesn't require, it's kind of the post. It's
just
weird anti-kicker kind of thing, post-landing ETB. And so this is the slowdown kicker or whatever. Slow kicker.
Yeah.
But... it does catch my eye enough to ask myself, and again, this is the Regency bias of this is my cube, but when I do see a card like this, I do ask the questions, how valuable is lifelink in this cube? How much will anthems actually press through an aggro strategy? So these are like Anthony's personal challenge questions when I'm doing that kind of top flick. Again, I don't land on this one. I don't want to double back to your Arabella. I don't land on that one either because that one's That one's messed me up. I lose to it, but I don't win with it.
I won with it.
I know. I don't know what that feels. I have no idea what that feels like.
It feels good. And one of the things that I do like about Intrepid Adversary over like Kicker is the fact that it's got that kind of anti-counterspell-y kind of thing because you don't have to pay the 1 and a white for the additional bonus until it hits the battlefield, right? So if it doesn't get countered and you're playing against the player with 2 blue mana open, then you can choose, obviously, to sink mana in it if you choose, or if not, maybe you've got another play in your hand. But I like that flexibility. Am I taking it pick one, pack one? No, because it's not the kind of card that I do take pick one, pack one. But it's a good card. Hengate Pathway, definitely not. It's a decent land, but there's better lands.
I'm putting all the verges in. I need the verges are expensive now. So I've got, that's the one thing about this cube that has become, the cringe distasteful is that I have 2-sided cards in here. It is the one cube where I've embraced that.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of that already in the cube.
Yeah, so I already did it, but I put the pathways in there thinking, all right, everybody's kind of gotten used to this. Now I'm going to put the verges in, but they're expensive.
They are.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, you've got the surveil lands in there.
I do have them. Yeah. So I don't need them. I just want them.
I know.
That's how that works.
All right. So Midnight Reaper. This is a very, very good card. So it's 3 mana for whenever a creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card.
I got that sick secret lair art.
Yeah, you got that beautiful art. Any creature that allows you to draw cards that is a repeatable effect. I mean, what's not to like about that? Am I taking it pick one, pack one? Probably not. Although, again, this is another card that if I'm really feeling like pushing black for whatever reason, it's pretty good. But to me, it's not a pick one, pack one card. But it's a good card. Crypt Breaker. I love me some Crypt Breaker. I'll go back to that. Primal Adversary. It's a wolf. It's a 3 mana 4/3.
I'm just gonna
we'll go back to that. We'll go back to that. Hellpack Piper. 3 mana. 3 colorless and a green. It's a 2/2. It's a wolf.
It's cute.
It's okay, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Unexpectedly Absent, in my opinion, is in a vacuum one of the top 1 or 2, maybe 3 cards in this pack. It's an absolutely bonkers powerful card. The fact that you can tuck for any amount of mana, anything, it gets rid of tokens permanently. It's just, it's an unconditional removal spell at instant speed. It's 2 and X, so you can pay 2 or you can pay 10 or whatever. To me, it's one of the most powerful cards in this deck or in this pack. It's one of the more powerful cards in the cube. As a removal, I think it's wonderful. Am I taking it pick one, pack one? Probably not. But again, as if you're feeling like forcing white or white control, it's probably the best.
Well, I want to double back on it. Let's pause for a minute. So back to what we're talking about from the draft style that you and I have, and also where the listeners land. Do you do the framework aspect while you're drafting of counting, like I've already got 3 of these?
Yeah, I feel like you have to. I feel like I'm always thinking, if I'm drafting control, we'll go back to the last pack or when we was looking at your previous cube, at the artifact cube. One of the reasons why I liked having Sunfall is because now I have a board wipe. If I'm drafting a blue-white control deck, I like to have some number of counterspells. I'm always thinking, okay, I've got my first one. Okay, cool. I've got my second one. Okay, that's even better. I've got my third one. Okay, now I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable. If I'm trying to draft a blue-white control deck and I've got 1 counterspell and then I go 2 more packs and I don't get a single other counterspell, I'm probably in some trouble. And at that point, especially when I start thinking about getting into pack 3, not only am I looking to take them very aggressively, but I'm also thinking the more I go on, if I don't get any counter magic, I've really got to start thinking about pivoting to a more aggressive strategy.
So I want to ask you another question. So we're going to keep progressing through this list. We're going to pause right now, unexpectedly absent. But one of the things we talked about, and we're going to call it our gripe episode about Chris's Cube, right? Where we brought him on, we kind of talked it out about some of the things that were, it was one of the things that I did on that particular day. I decided to, and this is where it's always interesting. People will tell you to draft interaction, and you definitely should.
Sure.
But I always lose to creatures. Like, I have a habit of losing to creatures connecting with me as a player.
Most people who lose dudes generally tend to lose to creatures.
Typically how I lose, and it's 2-1s, 3-1s, 3-4s, whatever, right?
Sure.
They never stop coming, and it's like waves of them. So I thought to myself, during that particular draft of Sandwich's Peasant Cube, that I would say, be damned with all this interaction. I know this sounds stupid saying it out loud, but I thought this as I was doing it. And that was the conversation we had about where I just took Arabella and then took a whole in his cube and took a whole bunch of things that just leaned into that, the 2-1 Savannah lines, and thought, I'll just send these waves of non-stop, never-ending devaluing removal and interaction. That's how I was thinking. Like, could you swarm so much that all their little, unexpectedly absents or their cut downs or any of these type of
Path to Exiles,
because it didn't matter. I thought that you could turn it off in a draft. I was thinking that back to the draft. This isn't so much the play, but while drafting, what if I just get like, I don't know, 20 of these? And it wasn't fun, by the way. But I was just going to keep.
And that is a valuable, to me, that's one of the things. And again, yes, we did talk to Chris about this. It's one of the things that I always feel is a problem that I've run into in a lot of drafts is when you have cubes that are angled towards creatures turning sideways being the majority of ways that people have to win, and you also flood the cube with a lot of especially efficient removal, 1 and even 2, and even 3 mana removal, depending on the speed of the cube. I feel like you're devaluing some of those strategies that involve those creatures and just really highly prioritizing the removal. Not that that isn't a valid strategy, and obviously you should take interaction, especially cheap interaction, whenever you can. But yes, there are problems, I feel, with certain cubes where, and it really does come down to efficiency more than anything, where you've got those 1 and 2 mana removal spells that can remove anything, even the 4, 5, 6 mana creature cards. That can be a little
Which we have talked about ad nauseum. We know this,
yes.
But this is kind of the headspace that both Stu and I have as drafters.
Correct.
And so let's kind of proceed forward. I'm going to spare the audience. I'm not going to read all mine. You got to send it, Pack Leader. That was your next one. What do you think?
I like it, but it's not a pick
It's medium. What? Okay, Overcharge Amalgam,
love
which
this
is
card. Love.
Is this the one you love?
This card. I love this card, but it's not my choice. So it's a 4 mana flash flying. It can explode a creature, and when you do, you can counter a target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. It's a 3/3 flyer for 4
it's really
with
good.
flash. It's absolutely bonkers. It has a lot of text on it. It's a zombie horror, right? The art is spectacular. I love everything about this card. Am I pick one, pack one in it? I don't know if I am. There's a reason why. But if my original choice for one wasn't in the cube anymore, or wasn't in this, if I'm taking this second, I'm taking that card. It's my second pick in this cube, in this pack. Absolutely, 100%. I love it so much. And again, primarily because not that it's necessarily the most powerful, because I think Arabella is probably the correct choice as far as pack one is concerned. Even though Arabella is also red-white, and it's a little difficult. Some people would say that choosing a red-white card, like a 2-color card that's 2 mana, is complex and is maybe not an ideal choice.
And then we have a Surveil land.
And then we got a Surveil land.
But okay, so I want to kind of just tie in right there. So Arabella has, in my mind, if I'm drafting this, a counterpart. I've seen this pack too. Arabella, I have a little bit of story time with me, kind of baggage attached to what I think about it, right?
Sure.
I have not won with Arabella.
Okay.
So as a drafter, when I see that, I recognize the power and I know that's busted. You know the card that's been beating the hell out of me? Crypt Breaker.
And that is my
pack one. That card is insane.
And is this maybe a memory of me playing this card the last time we drafted this cube?
Yeah.
And I suppose I'm kind of going against my own rules there, because I'm talking about Arabella not taking it because I drafted it previously. But the last time I drafted this cube, I drafted a Crypt Breaker deck. And I absolutely
took over the
wiped the floor with everybody. It's just nuts. So this is 1 black mana for a 1/1 zombie. You can pay 1 in the black, tap, discard a card, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield, and you can tap 3 untapped zombies you control, draw a card, and lose a life. The fact that you can just discard your nonsense, your lands that you don't need, cards that are overcosted that you're not going to cast anytime soon, to get this constant pressure, ways to, again, if I'm drafting blue-black, I've now got an easy way to get a zombie out or a creature card out to be able to exploit with Overcharged Amalgam. Or I've got ways to, be able to do something with Lightning Mauler, where I can, put another card into the graveyard, maybe even Undying Evil it, bring it back. I mean, I'm losing my thought process. You've just got so much. Like, again, my head is kind of spinning.
It's kind of spinning when you do this.
Yeah, there's so much you can do.
Well, so the synergy is not what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, again, I go back to that fundamental that I use. Is this card replaceable? And again, being the designer, the curator of the cube, I have recency bias while making these decisions, but I do this in other people's cubes. Lightning Mauler in this cube is not necessarily a replaceable effect, even though it's not the most powerful. Giving something haste is very strong in this cube.
It is.
And it's something that you wouldn't normally expect someone to say. Midnight Reaper, that card draw advantage is also, it does exist in here. Blue has typically all the preordains and ponders and all the things.
Yeah.
And I do make this kind of power maxed version of Innistrad meets Duskmourn. But Midnight Reaper is repeatability on draw. So I see that. Crit Breaker, the reason why I chose that card, not because it's my favorite, is because I've had my ass handed to me by not making it my favorite.
Yes.
And that creates that, it's kind of like that, it's a little bit of like experience, I guess. Maybe what's interesting is as I draft this, or draft somebody's cube, I lean in too much to previous experiences. Like I don't wipe the chalkboard clean, the slate clean as I should. And I'm asking the listeners, when you're drafting, do you have a tendency to kind of, I guess, take those predetermined notions or those experiences from other cubes and then plant them into a new environment?
Not even just previous cubes, but maybe even this particular cube, right? Because I know the way that you play and I know the way that you think. So I'm probably thinking, like you just said, when you saw this card and you knew the impact that it had in the previous time that we drafted it, you're looking at this card thinking, I got my rear end.
It must be the best card.
It's got to be the best card in the whole world. Why is it not in the vintage cube? It's just the most broken.
And if I didn't know any of that, it would have been unexpectedly absent because of what it does. It's not a replaceable effect. It gets everything on the board.
It's very
and
powerful.
That would have been where my headspace would have leaned. So I would have looked at haste, unexpectedly absent, Crit Breaker because it kicked my ass.
Yeah.
And that's not really a good draft strategy, really. All right, let's kind of tie that one off. But what I'm curious about is some of the baggage that you, the listener, as we're kind of just rambling through these pack one, pick ones, we're going to do one more in my Powered Vintage Cube, which we're going to go random. You never know what you're going to get. It might be the most boring pack one, pick one in the world, but we're going to do this kind of spin that wheel interesting. And if there are any kind of power or whatever, we'll just kind of announce that and ignore it. But I think it's interesting when you're drafting. I want to understand, and I would love the listeners to give us some feedback and also your draft strategies. Do you pivot? Do you have a tendency to stay open on that first pack? Do you always take the lands? I mean, what are your habits? What do you lean into as a person? And it's more of like a thought exercise, not just so we can talk out to the universe. It's so that we can learn, because I consider myself a really great cube designer. I use the word great like a little cautiously there, but I'm getting really good at it.
I think you've got enough cubes.
I'm a medium,
I think you've had enough good
mid-level
feedback.
player.
I don't know.
I sit like a 6 out of 20.
I think you're being very harsh on yourself. I think you're a better
But I've
player
seen
than you
other
give yourself
people
credit
I
for.
see other people that I can never beat, and I'm always curious, where are they winning at? Like, I know they're winning on the battlefield, but are they winning in the draft? Question mark. Are they winning in their singular card analysis? What level of detail they're going to?
So
Because
you know what I think would be a good thought experiment? We've talked about a couple of players. We talked about Tom, right? Tom is in our Discord. We should reach out to him. So when we release this episode, we should just ask him
how stupid we are.
how dumb are Stu and Anthony? No, ask him, when you are drafting, you've got this spectrum of both fun and competition.
He's a competitive player.
He is a competitive player. So I'm going to say Tom's spectrum of competition, building a competitive deck, very rarely goes below a 9, and he's probably at a 9 or a 10 every time he drafts.
I would lean into that too. Yeah.
And I would say that Tom's just a player who wants to play very powerful Magic, and not that I think he doesn't draft for fun, but I think the way that Tom drafts, his fun is playing the type of deck that he drafts. He enjoys playing Magic, and that ability that he has to craft and draft a very, very powerful deck is something that you learn over time. It's something you learn. The better player you are, the more that you play.
He played Legacy and Vintage.
He's played Legacy and Vintage, and I think he's just.
But what's
he's
interesting?
just a good player.
What's interesting about him, though, we'll use him as a case study, and we got to bring him on to talk about it. And I don't think he has a lot of interest in doing that because he's like a very private person.
Yep.
But we're going to talk about him a lot and make him listen. But what's interesting, one of the things that he does is he doesn't judge a cube by its power levels or power bands either. Like when we're saying like this is a competitive player, you can hand Thomas a pauper cube and he will play that to the max.
Yes.
You can hand him some crazy janky 5 dragons walking to a bar and he will find lines and edges in that cube. But he has, it's interesting. He's drafting like on a weird level. He's always smiling. It's not what you would expect.
He's smiling at me while he's carrying
while
on
he's
my
literally
spells,
beating you to
destroying all
death
my creatures and beating me to death.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so lovely.
Holding a
appreciate
dragon
that.
by the tail, swatting you with it. But but it's interesting, and I try to learn from people like that. We talked about it in a previous episode.
Yeah.
I have a habit of sitting across from the person who beats me the most. And yes, that is competitive aspect of Anthony. but it's also my yearning to learn. There's somewhere in the middle here, right? A little bit of like, and just because I beat them doesn't mean I learned anything. It just means I got lucky. I need to beat them multiple times to feel like I've achieved some kind of like, all right, I got a little bit more game here.
Maybe.
A little bit more level up.
Maybe. But I also think that you are someone whose desire to be competitive ranges all the way, I don't want to say from 0, but I would argue at least from a 3 or a 4 all the way up to a 10, right?
Yeah.
And your fun is all the way at a 10. A lot of the time. Sometimes you might be at a 4 or a 5, depending on what the environment is, if there's, some kind of pride on the line, who you're playing against. But I think that my desire to have fun is always a little higher on the spectrum than my desire to be competitive.
Well, I want to double back real quick to the Artifact Cube before we move into the Vintage. When we're talking about Arkham Daxam, that would have been my fun choice.
Yeah, 100%.
And I would have had a good time doing that.
And that wouldn't have won a game.
Maybe
0 and 6 all day, baby.
Maybe. Like I want to get Welder and I want to get Oswald Fiddlebender and I want to go deep on that idea. Armix, the reason why I choose Armix, it's interesting how this, I guess it's not like my own personal deck building strategy or my drafting that I'm incorporating here.
Well,
it's my observations of other people back to Cryptbreaker. You beat me with that.
Of course.
Armix has beat me to death.
Well, let me follow up
I
with
latch
that.
on to that.
Let me follow up with that. So you're drafting that because of Armix, right? Because of that singular card. How much are you considering the rest of the cube when you're taking that pick one, pack one?
I think
specifically because this is your cube, inside and out. Are you thinking about, I'm taking that card and I'm just hoping to build a deck that utilizes that and has some removal and can win? Or are you thinking, okay, now I've got
you
stuff
want the
in
honest
graveyard?
answer?
Yes.
It's the most lazy removal that I can choose. What I mean is I can
Thank
discard
you
a
for your
card.
honesty.
Yeah, I can just I don't have to think about the removal timing.
That's a legitimate reason to draft something. You've got a repeatable removal effect on a stick.
It means
You're
I
hitting
can.
for 3.
Well, you can say that, but it means I can also just not mess up on my tempo and go. All right, cool. I can't cast this 4-drop.
And it sucks if you draw 4 lands in a row.
You see, but you see what I'm saying.
Which is why I don't draft.
So
that
I
card.
have a tendency during the draft to lean in the cards that aren't easy button, but they're willing to walk me a little bit through my challenge, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's a draft habit that I have. Back to the I don't know how to pivot either. All right, let's go ahead and move on.
Pivot.
All right, so
here we go. This is the final cube.
I want to put a little star here, an asterisk, right?
Ding,
so
ding,
there's
ding.
been a lot of conversations about powered vintage cube and power maxing lately.
Okay.
And we do acknowledge here at UberCube that power maxing, well, I'm just not going to do it at all. I'm actually going to tell you that it can be really fun, right? Like this is going to like a sushi dinner at a really fine restaurant sometimes. And then sometimes I do, in fact, enjoy playing both my powered vintage cube and Chris's powered vintage cube. It's not something I want to do every day. This is a nice, decadent, savory dessert, right? Like I want to touch some Black Lotus and all that. But I enjoy the layers that you can actually unlock inside of a vintage cube. And we're going to talk about that more in a follow-up episode.
I would argue that one of the reasons I talked about this privately, one of the reasons why
to yourself or
no, I actually talked about this with you. This was a long time ago, and I said, you know what? I'm kind of over some of these nonsense cubes that I've been drafting recently. And I feel like I just want to draft vintage cube all the time. And the reason why is because I felt like I had abandoned some of my philosophies when it comes to drafting, and I wasn't trying to have fun as much as I really felt like I should be, because this is why I play Magic. It's the reason why I love Cube, is because I love to play and draft and everything for fun. And so it was this familiarity and the soft, warm blanket of vintage Cube. The fact that certainly with your Cube, to an extent, Chris's Cube, that I know if you've made some changes recently, maybe 320, 330 out of the 360 cards, right? Chris's is a little larger.
Well, so mine's a 540. It's the right size.
Yours is 540, right?
Yeah.
Chris's is 450, I believe, yeah. So that to me was something that represented a comfort, right? So I liked that I knew much more about the cube than I did any of the other cubes. The more that I've drafted the other cubes, and I kind of feel like I was maybe getting a bit emotional. I love the horror cube. I like the artifact cube. I love the femme cube. You've got a lot of good cubes, a lot of great cubes. This cube is, to me, just a different way to play Magic. The same way that it is, or you could make the argument that it is with any of the other cubes. I think that there's something warm again about having that familiarity and that high power level. You know that the games are, I don't want to say predetermined, but there's those archetypes that are very familiar with everybody. So you've got those Boros Aggro, you've got Reanimate, you've got Storm, etc., etc. I think that this is a cube that I've I went from like only wanting to draft to not really wanting to draft to enjoying drafting it periodically, occasionally, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think there's such a huge place in the world of cube for a vintage cube.
It's good on a rotation.
Sure.
Right? Again, back
Not
to
very
that-
frequently,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
occasionally
that
you'll love
it's a
busting
nice
it out.
little decadent dessert.
All right, here we go.
All right, we're going to go random here. We're hitting it right now.
All right,
Let's go.
So
waiting for the internet to load.
well, hang on.
Thank you, Cube
There's going to be a caveat. If there is a single piece of power in,
And there is.
and there is. All right. So this one's
you-
ditching because there's a Mox in there. So I'm gonna
click-
re-roll.
If we click it again, it's never going to stop. That's the problem with power, actually. We should talk about that. A lot of people run into that. You can keep hitting this, and we're always going to get a pack one, pick one. There goes another power.
And there's another piece
And
of power.
interesting, yeah. And this actually creates the doldrums of these decisions, too, that people deal with. All right, this one's... sure, we'll work it. We'll work it. See, okay, so Stu's...
No, we're not. We're not. Okay.
Stu's learning something.
No, we're not doing
Stu's
it.
learning something
We're
interesting.
not doing it.
You're never going to find anything that's like a clear choice.
Okay, we're not doing it because the simple fact that Mana Crypt is
I
in
think
this.
we're making our point here.
Mana Crypt is there. It's the best card by a gazillion miles, so we're going to re-roll. Here we go.
Okay, so I want to.
Here we go.
Well,
This is
before
much better.
you yell this out loud, this is what's interesting about
Anthony
a pack
already
one.
knows
Well,
what I'm
no,
taking.
yeah, there is. But what's interesting about a pack one, pick one, and a powered vintage cube, and I'm talking about like all the power 9 and all that.
Yeah.
You go from 0 to 100 pretty quick. So you go from 100, they go, lame, yeah, sure, Mox, cool Soul Ring, cool Mana Crypt, and they don't even bother to like dissect the rest of the cards, and it doesn't create like. It doesn't create a discussion whenever I post it on the MTG, cube drafting Facebook page.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, right?
Right.
They're like, whatever, cool. And then the other one is if I put cards in that are subpar, they're like, this doesn't look a vintage cube. Like, there's almost borderline sometimes no winning with this audience.
No.
So I will find myself, I want to do a pack one, pick one to create some engagement on the UberCube Discord. And I don't do this very often. I will cycle through like 5, 6, 7, 8 times, which would we just do now? 4?
This
right,
is the
literally
fourth.
live
This
right
is the
now.
fourth.
And
2 Mox and then a Mana Crypt.
I still think this one's medium. Like on a conversation, like this one's got
Yeah.
some clear winners. That's the problem with a vintage cube is some of the pack one pick ones are going to literally thump you in the forehead. But let's try that tension out and see how you feel. So just call these names.
I'm going to call the cards out, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so we have, again, this is Uber Bear's Power Cube, 540 Vintage. Umazawa's Jitte, Coalition Relic, Pestamite, Flash, Barrow-Goyf, Duress, Emrakul the Eon's Torn, Lush Portico, Restless Fence, Psychic Frog, Grist the Hunger Tide, Fallen Shinobi, Containment Priest, Inti, Seneschal of the Sun, and Lotus Field.
All right, can I go first?
You are going to go first.
All right, this is really hard.
So let's. I don't think we need to go through all the cards.
We're not.
This is.
I'm just gonna.
go straight to your pack one. Pick one.
That's where it gets really weird. I'm gonna dial in. I lose a lot to Flash.
Okay.
I lose a lot to Flash. I don't want to lose to Flash. Another card that's on here, Psychic Frog, comes up a lot. I know this card's busted and it is amazing in most environments. I struggle to win with this card. I always get beat with this card, if that makes sense. It's interesting. If I'm looking at this and Anthony's playing and I'm having fun, there's 2 cards that speak to me, and these are not the best picks. It's probably part of my draft problem. I either go for Duress because I like pack one. I like turn 1 interaction.
Absolutely nothing wrong with Duress.
I like stripping their hands.
Amazing card.
Duress is not the best card that I can get to that. Jitte has never really failed me, but Jitte tends to lean into an aggressive strategy on my end when I'm playing Magic.
I'm a little higher on Jitte than I may have been in the past. I think that maybe in your iteration of the cube, which is a little more creature heavy, certainly on the low end than maybe the Modo cube. So I actually think Jitte is stronger in your cube than the Modo cube. But I think Jitte is a great card.
If I'm playing for fun and I'm going to do something that's not replaceable, and sometimes my pack one pick ones do lean that way, I want to do something weird. I want to go out. I'm going to get Emrakul, and it's not the pack one pick one card here. It's not even close. It's probably 100% definitely the problem with my draft strategies. But I want a draft to have a little bit of fun. I want to have a little twist here. So I want an Emrakul because now I want to look for sneak attacks. I want to do through the breaches. I want to have this kind of fun. I enjoy that little bit slower pacing of a powered vintage cube. It feels like more like I'm playing and the cards aren't playing me.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Look at this pack. There's no show and tell. There's no sneak attack.
I know.
There's no cheating
I
McCheatertons.
know there's not.
Right?
I'm
I'll be honest.
staking a claim.
I don't think there's anything wrong with taking Emrakul, pick one, pack one in this pack. I really don't. It's an absolutely absurdly strong creature. If you cheat it out in the first couple of turns, it's one of those.
You get a channel, get whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
There's plenty of ways in your cube to get this out. What would be interesting is after we have all the conversations about it, is we could just do a mock draft and see. I mean, for all we know, Sneak Attack might be in the next pack, or Show and Tell might be in the next pack, or whatever. But I don't think Emrakul's ever a bad pick.
The best card in here is Flash, in my mind. But I lose with between that and Psychic Frog. I lose with such regularity to those cards, and then the third one would be Jitte. Those are the ones that bust me up the most in this cube.
Yeah, I look, and
I'm basing
love Flash.
It's interesting though. I'm basing my draft
on what you got beat
on
by.
Yes.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah, stop doing that so I can start being a better drafter. But
well, hang on. Let's rewind a little bit. Do you remember the last time we played and there was a Flash going around? Someone, in their insanity, passed me this card.
That was me.
It was you.
I know.
Don't do that again.
I don't want to play that way.
Sometimes you just gotta take it because it's insane.
I don't know. See, I guess I insert a lot of how that's interesting to bring up you as the drafter and the listener. How much insertion of your, I guess, deck building ideals do you insert into the draft?
I think your personality in general.
My personality is
So let me ask you this, right? I'm giving you 2 picks. Okay, not 2 picks in this pack. Technically, I'm asking you to pick one card because you're trying to win, and I'm asking you to pick a second card because you're trying to have fun.
All right, so I'll go with have fun. That'll be Emrakul.
Okay,
and if I'm trying to win, probably would be Psychic Frog.
Okay, mine is absolutely without doubt Psychic Frog.
Yeah,
and to me, it's the most powerful card in the pack. Flash, just on the virtue of the fact that you do need those haymakers. Flash isn't like a Sneak Attack where you're also getting the advantage of the attack, right? You only get the ETB triggered ability. That's it.
Very specific cards that must be...
Yeah, you get a World Spine Worm, you're winning.
But let me ask you a question. So if you take Flash,
right,
World Spine Worm outside of Sneak Attack and other cards like that seem less appealing in the draft. Are you, if you take Flash, kind of staking that claim as the drafter while passing these cards around on that decision? Like, are you making it less visible to people? Actually, you're pack one, pick one, so they don't even know you took it, right? But they wouldn't be incentivized to take a payoff for Flash. They want Flash and then get the payoff, right?
It's very unlikely that anyone is taking World Spine Worm unless
a card that does one of those type of effects.
Right, and there's other, don't get me wrong, there's other very, very powerful cards. Atraxa, right? The dinosaur, the mono red dinosaur.
Yeah, and then we've got the demon or whatever, the Archon of Cruelty.
Archon of Cruelty,
which is a medium version of that. You got the dinosaur that does the thing like you mentioned.
Yeah.
You've got the Selesnya guy that does that.
Torsten, yeah.
Yeah. But like if you take Flash out of this pack as a drafter, you've taken down the signpost, the signal.
Yeah, and there's so much value in no one knowing that Flash has been taken.
And then you open up a lane for yourself,
You
right?
do, yeah.
But yeah, if I'm playing like super harsh here, I dig into the duress. I like leaning into the hand stripping and the pulling. I've got my own like draft faults, I guess. But from this pack, is there something that like you could advise the listeners? This is such a generic kind of vintage cube pack that I don't know how much we can pull out of this. There's not a lot of dissection here.
There's not, and I think that's just the nature of the vintage cube, right?
Yeah.
So I think in a vacuum, the most powerful card is Psychic Frog. It requires nothing else. It draws you cards. It gets big. You can discard cards, which is obviously very powerful. It triggers to draw a card on both players and planeswalkers, which is absolutely bonkers. So to me, in a vacuum, that's the most powerful card. Flash has the highest upside. I honestly think that if I'm doing for fun, I might even consider something like Fallen Shinobi. I really, really like Fallen Shinobi. I think it's a very, very powerful card. It's 4-mana ninjutsu, which really isn't very difficult to get to, and having just any creature that you can attack with isn't particularly difficult either. Emrakul, same kind of reason for that, right? You may need a way to cheat it out, but if you do, it's just gonna end the game. And yeah, there's a lot of cards in here. Here's something else. You've also got Pestamite in here, which is not going to be a familiar card with anyone who's only looking at vintage card through Modo, because that's really in here for things like Kikijiki and so on, right? So that card may be something that I would also consider, because I also like, not as a pick one pack one, but consider that as I hope this one kind of wheels, right? It's actually a very, very good card with someone like Fallen Shinobi, because you can flash it out and then attack with it flies, and then, you know, get your Shinobi in. So I think something like that is there's a lot of fun in this pack. And this is one of the reasons why I kind of think I will defend the Vintage Cube to a large extent, because I still think that even though there's some amount of dissent about its reputation, if you will, which I don't think is completely unfounded, but I still think that there's a combination of a lot of fun things to do, especially there's a lot of fun ways to be able to flavor this out for your own taste, right? Not everything has to be a clone of the Moto Vintage Cube or whatever.
Which I intentionally do not.
Yeah, exactly. Even yours and Chris's Vintage Cubes play very differently, right? So I love the fact that you have Kikijiki in your cube. I love it. I actually, one of my absolutely all-time, maybe my most powerful deck that I ever drafted was at the second CubeCon, where I drafted a Grixis Reanimate deck with Kikijiki, and I went 3-0-6-0. Like, I absolutely wiped the floor with every game. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I went 3-0-6-1, and you beat me because you used Elspeth's ability to destroy creatures with power 4 or greater.
I did, in fact. And that's how much
always
you remember
that.
Yeah. So I hope this exercise has actually been fun for the listeners. I know that it's a little hard to kind of track. We're going to actually upload all three of these Pack 1 Pick 1s. We didn't really want to focus on the Pack 1 Pick 1 so much as how Stu and I kind of deliberate the draft. And while we're not drafting, we understand that, like, it's a singular pick, but where would we go from that one choice, and how would we take that to our second choice? And you can kind of see how designers and players are a whole different type of situation sometimes, right? It's really hard to be both. And I consider myself a strong designer and a learning to be a player of the game, right? It's always an ever-growing type of it's an educational experience every time. And we've seen some of my bad habits. I have a way of imprinting what I have experienced as beating me as a good card, and then taking that into a draft and using it as a reference point. I don't know if that's necessarily a great way of learning Magic, and then we'll work on my pivoting as we go along. Do you have any bad habits?
Yes, I don't know what they are, but I'm sure I have them.
You play into the fun too much. The fun gets you.
I don't know if I would necessarily identify that as a bad habit.
It's not.
I think that I probably maybe think a little less than I could. And I suppose it depends. Like, a bad habit would determine, like, a bad outcome. And I don't want to necessarily say that the habits I have always produce bad outcomes.
What about the building the deck as we draft the deck? Is that a good habit or a bad habit?
I think it's a good habit. I really do. I think that having the wherewithal and the understanding of what you have in your pool, and to be able to make critical decisions based on what you've already drafted, rather than just, hey, this is in the colors that I know I'm in, so I'm just going to draft it, and hey, here's an... I do really think that there is a huge skill in drafting. And I will say it's one of the things that... Something we haven't really talked about much in our group is doing anything online, right? We're always drafting in paper. It's much more difficult to track in paper unless your memory is fantastic, and mine is not great. I'm 45, 46 years of age. So it is a major conscious effort that I have to make to remember what I've drafted, how I want the draft to go, cards I'm looking out for. Some of that could be cube familiarity. Obviously, again, it's much easier with something like a vintage cube where I know all the cards. Like the black-green deck that I drafted, it was black-green, so right? It was a Golgari deck that I drafted of your Horror Cube. And when I got that Crypt Breaker, I knew that was a card that I was able to build an engine around, or it was a card that I could just utilize just straight up for its ability to create 2/2s. I knew it was a 1-mana creature that if that isn't dealt with, it's going to win the game unless my opponent goes absolutely ham sandwiches. People tried to deal with it, they couldn't. So that to me was a much easier deck to draft, because I was just drafting all the good black and green creatures and colorless cards if I felt they fit the deck. But it's not always that simple. And I think sometimes it's about how complex is the deck that you're drafting, right? And if you're someone that likes very, very complex decks, if you're a very, very good player and a very good drafter, then that just makes life easier. If you're not as experienced either as a drafter or a player or with the cube that you're drafting, the more complex a deck that you're trying to draft can obviously be much more of a challenge. So I feel like I have a decent enough handle on the cubes that we have in our group right now that I can normally pick some kind of lane and run with it and draft a decent deck. I suppose it's one of the reasons why I'm always excited when we get a new cube that's introduced to our group, because it's like, oh, cool. Like, I get to look at 15 new cards, and I don't really know what strategies are open. I don't know where all the complementary pieces are, or where all the synergies are, or what the meta is. So being able to find it, it's what I think, again, it's one of the great things about new cubes, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited I need to start ordering cards for my Diablo cube, is now it's a new cube that I can bring in and say, hey, like, let's find out what people can do with this cube. Let's find out what you can do and I can do to have fun. Let's find out what Tom can do to break it. Let's find out what Chris can do to control the crap and frustrate everybody, right? Because Chris is very much has his style, right? So this, again, I think strategies are fun. They're very individual. I think they should be very individual to the cube. And I can't, not to be sounding too cheesy, but it's one of the things I love so much about cube.
So as we go ahead and just tie this off right now, I have a question for the listeners. If you wouldn't mind sending us in either to the Discord or to the UberCube Gmail account, etc., or hit us up on Bluesky, etc., we would like to know, what are your draft habits? What are you willing to volunteer? Saying, like, we want to learn, like, from this discussion, do you have anything that either you picked up or that you say, hey, that's me too? Or do you have, like, your own things that you've been learning as a Magic player? Because I think we lean a little bit more into a Magic player here, less into a cube designer during this conversation.
And feel free
in the evaluation of the cards.
Yeah,
right?
I'd say feel free. Use one of the picks, use one of the packs, the 15 card boosters that we've got that we'll add in our show notes. Or even if it's something that's come up online that you've seen an angle, or you have maybe a differing opinion from the majority. If someone posts a pick one, pack one, and everyone's like, I want to take this one card because it's the most objectively powerful, and you got like, hey, but this card, I know the cube and I know I can do this, that, and the other. Those kind of things are interesting because it provides an insight to someone who may have a better understanding of the cube, or may just look for different avenues that other players aren't.
Exactly. It's a learning opportunity is what I'm looking for here.
100%.
And then other than that, Stu, can you take us away to the socials?
As always, a huge shout out to all of our Patreons, to Patrick, to Jeff, to Nick Lapointe, to Chris Fitzgerald, Timber Dragon, Brian Keaton, Lord Justice, Nick Lapointe, Preston, and Sam McKenna. Huge shout out and a big thanks to all of you guys for supporting the show and helping us keep the lights on here at UberCube. If you want to get in on the conversation, go to the facebook.com/groups/MTGCube drafting page. A lot of fun conversation. A lot of members over there talking about Cube. And if you want to support the show, you can also use our inkedgaming.com/UberCube affiliate link. Go and get all kinds of cool products, playmats, dice bags, mouse pads, custom and large volume
stuff and things.
Stuff and things. If you want to reach us at the socials, you can find us on Bluesky, ubercubemtgpodcast.bsky.social. You can also find us at Twitter at ubercubemtgpod. If you got a longer question or comment about this episode or anything else with the podcast, or about one of UberCube's,
many things. We're over 1,100 as far as the
cubes
Facebook goes.
An Uber Bears cube.
A
Maze cube.
The Uber Maze.
Uber Bears cube, yep. You can reach us at ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. As always, come hang out on the Discord and patreon.com/ubercube. Again, a big thanks to all of our Patreons. And for last but not least, we do host our content on YouTube at UberCube MTG Podcast 747. If you just, feel like an alternative format, there you go.
And then we're going to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube is Happy Cubing!